I very often talk about emotional eating and, for example, gaining insight into your emotions or managing your emotions so that you can feel calmer and make better choices. Today, though, I would like to look at three reasons, physical reasons, that might lead you to eat, to reach for food. And so we're going to look here at restriction, sleep, and physical illness. Let's talk then about restricting your food intake. And obviously, this is something that often people do in order to try to shift some unhealthy weight or to reach an ideal way of looking or feeling. And yet, there are a lot of issues that are caused when we restrict our calorie intake. The first of these that can have you reaching for food is to do with ghrelin, which is an important hunger hormone. And even if you are just fasting for a while and then eating, ghrelin starts to build up from the morning when you wake up, and it builds up over the course of the day. And if you're not eating calories earlier on in the day, then your ghrelin levels will keep going up. And then by the time it gets to evening, which is a time when so many of us reach for food, your ghrelin levels are very high, so it becomes very difficult to resist eating. And when you do eat, you get more of a kick from it. You get a dopamine hit because you're suddenly satisfying that hunger and you're suddenly lowering your ghrelin levels, finally, after a sort of period of tension that has built up because your ghrelin levels have been building up, so that it feels more satisfying. However, it is harder to stop. And that also gets you into the habit of wanting to eat at that time because you get more of a reward from it. So it's good to change that pattern to eat earlier in the day, for example, so that you do not get that buildup of ghrelin and you don't get that extra dopamine hit either. Another issue around restricting your calories is around ghrelin as well. And that is what's sometimes called Last Supper thinking. So it's kind of, I'm planning to not eat this or do this differently tomorrow. And just the very thought of that boosts your ghrelin levels today, making it harder to resist. So that's very often when you say, okay, I'll start a diet tomorrow, then you end up eating far more than you normally would have today. So not thinking about it in those terms or changing the way that you think about things, having a longer term plan or doing something to help yourself so that that thought is less strong, less powerful, has less of an effect, are all good things to do. And a solution there might be to do some tapping around this idea of what you are and aren't going to eat. You can do some tapping to think about what you have already eaten. There are studies that have been done that have shown that if you think about what you've already eaten in the day, it lowers your ghrelin levels. And if you think about things that you want to eat, it also lowers your ghrelin levels a little bit, almost as if you had actually eaten it, so that when you do eat it, you tend to eat less of that thing. So two solutions would be, for example, to imagine eating something or to think about all the things that you have actually eaten. And I would add a little bonus there that if you use tapping or havening touch at the same time, the effect will be even stronger. Another physical issue around restricting your calories is that your body may not actually be getting the nutrition that it needs. It may not be getting all the micronutrients and macronutrients, so that there is actually also an element of real physical hunger, of real physical need. And one of the problems here is that you might be eating a lot of calories, but still not actually getting the nutrients that you need. So one solution here would be to actually have something very nutritious. For example, I have a green smoothie every day that has lots of fiber and lots of micronutrients. It also has protein in it, so that I'm giving my body a lot of nutrition so that it doesn't feel that hunger for nutrients. And so therefore it makes it easier to lower my ghrelin levels, to feel satisfied with what I'm eating, and to stay away from foods that are less nutritious, but perhaps enjoyable. So here, the solutions that we've seen are thinking about what you've eaten, thinking about what you'd like to eat, giving yourself some real nutrition, eating earlier in the day. And there are also a couple of others. For example, doing some work around diet mentality, about what are the things that are driving you to want to diet, about how you feel about yourself, your own body image. Doing this while using havening or tapping touch can really help to rewire your brain in these areas so that you can let go of that diet mentality. Because partly the diet mentality in and of itself, once again, goes to this ghrelin question and is likely to lead you to feel more stressed, which increases your ghrelin as well, and lead you to want to restrict your calories, which also increases your ghrelin. So eating healthy amounts when your body needs it is one helpful thing, and doing some emotional work around the diet mentality itself is another very helpful thing to do. Moving on, let's talk about sleep. Because when you're fatigued, your body is asking you for more energy. You boost your energy through sleeping. And if you don't get enough sleep, then your body may look for that extra energy through food rather than sleep. So improving your sleep can be a great way to reduce your overeating, your emotional eating, your eating generally, because your body no longer needs that extra boost of calories to help it power through the day. And once again, that's also especially later on in the day. So what can you do to improve your sleep? Clearly, sleep hygiene is an important thing, and you could think about, is your room dark enough? Is it quiet enough for you to sleep well? Also around screens. Firstly, it's now very well known about blue screens stop you sleeping, so you should have your screen set to a night mode. However, what some people don't know so much is that if you are getting dopamine hits from your screen usage, for example, when you're on social media, that tends to be something that pings your dopamine quite a bit. Dopamine can actually stop you sleeping because it gets you more activated. So, for example, if you are scrolling and you're getting these little rewards, oh, I saw this, oh, I saw that, that can actually interfere with your sleep. So it's not just about having your screen on blue, but thinking about if you are consuming some kind of content on a screen or device, what kind is it? Is it going to be increasing your dopamine levels? It can also be important to think about the temperature of the room where you're trying to sleep. It's been shown that it's better to keep your room cooler and then maybe snuggle into a warm bed or put on an extra layer, either an extra layer of blankets or an extra layer of pajamas, to help you to be warm inside the bed, but for the room itself to be fairly cool. In terms of the noise levels, it is good to either reduce the noise levels outside of yourself or using earplugs, or for example, some people find it helpful to have white noise around them when they're trying to sleep. In terms of the tools that I offer people, there are also a number that can help with sleep. For example, there have been studies done that have shown that you actually change your brainwave patterns if you use hypnotic visualizations before or during your sleep. So you actually help yourself to sleep more deeply, to sleep better, if you use a hypnotic visualization to get to sleep or to stay asleep. Equally, tapping is another great solution in the sense that you can release the worries of the day, lower your stress levels before you go to sleep, and that will help you to sleep better. And in the same way, this moving your autonomic nervous system from sympathetic mode, being engaged, to parasympathetic mode, rest and digest, breathing exercises can help with that. Anything that is longer on the exhale will tend to bring you more into that parasympathetic mode. And there are lots of different kinds of breathing exercises that you can do that are in that way very relaxing. The third physical thing that can have you reaching for food that I would like to talk about here is being physically unwell. And there are two different aspects here. One might be an acute sickness, so something that's just happening in this moment. For example, you have a cold and therefore you're feeling poorly. Now, obviously, you can do physical things to help with that, whatever that may be that you like to do. For example, a nasal rinse or steaming or putting on Olbus oil or Vicks VapoRub or whatever those things may be. It can also be more chemical things that the doctor will prescribe. And there is also normally an emotional element to it, the feeling a bit poorly, perhaps that you need to go out and be in public and be seen, but because you're feeling poorly, you don't feel like you're looking your best either. And with the more emotional elements around feeling ill and poorly, we can use some of these emotional tools to help with that. For example, you could do some tapping around. I'm feeling really poorly. I don't really want to be seen, and yet I have to do this. And by that, you can release the charge on that so that you don't have that as an additional element that might have you reaching for food for comfort. So that's really about looking at the emotional side of the sickness. How is it making you feel? How is it making you feel about yourself and your self-image? Those kinds of things. We can also look at chronic illness, and that can often lead to feeling unhappy, even feeling depressed. And there have been some really great studies showing that we can have an effect on that. For example, Dr. Peter Stapleton of Bond University did a study where she did MRI scans on people who had chronic pain and then gave them 6 weekly group sessions online of EFT tapping, and then did another MRI scan. And they showed that the neural connections around pain decreased. Not as many parts of the brain were being activated, and the activation levels were less. So this means that people weren't connecting being in pain with being unhappy as much, and they also were feeling the pain less. And there's quite a few things that you can do to help with that management of pain. So this isn't necessarily about changing it physically, it's about changing your experience of the pain. And tapping can certainly help with that, as shown by Dr. Peter Stapleton's study. Hypnosis is also very well known for helping managing pain. It's been used as an anesthetic, but also as just a general pain reduction. And there are different ways of using that. So for example, you can use the hypnosis to focus in on the pain, and the more you go into it, the more you release and soften it. Or you can use hypnosis in the opposite direction, so to speak, of going elsewhere, of taking your mind elsewhere so that you leave the pain behind and you are somewhere different. And both of those can be effective ways of managing pain at a chronic level. So tapping and hypnosis, both very good for the pain side of physical unwellness. In terms of the emotions associated with feeling unwell or being ill on a more permanent basis, havening can also be good to release the emotional charge on that. For example, transpirational havening, where you explore the emotions that are connected with that sickness. And finally, another solution would be to work on the anxiety, the beliefs around what does it mean to feel unwell. We may have beliefs that were created, for example, when we were children, when our parents talked about what it means to be sick. Oh, you should pull your socks up and just get on with it. Well, that may not actually always be the best solution. And yet you may feel guilty if you don't do that, because that is the belief that was instilled in you as a child. And so you can use havening, for example, to work on that belief from the past, or you could use hypnosis also to work on that belief from the past, to let it go, to remove the emotional charge associated with these stories that we were told as children that we have taken on, internalized, and made our own. I hope then that you found some useful suggestions here of things that you can do to make a difference so that when you have one or other of these physical things that are having you reach for food, you can solve it a little and do something different. Please do like and subscribe, and perhaps even press the bell button to get notified when I post more content like this.